Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. Today, spring. We're talking the snow goose conservation hunt, the white goose hunt that happens every year. Opens in Alberta on March 15th and runs to June 15th. Some people are probably going, ho-hum. Others of us are chomping at the bit to get out there. And today I have 2 of my goose hunting fanatic buddies with me. Josh Luedtke, who I've known since he was still in diapers. I've known his dad for years. And I'd like to take responsibility for mentoring Josh through a bunch of this, but he's had influence from a lot of people in the hunting realm. But I could say without little doubt that waterfowl are your favorite thing in life. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite things.
Yes, and joining us all the way from Oregon in the stateside is Mario Friendy. And Mario's been a good friend of mine for years, another person that I could only describe as a waterfowl fanatic. He's worked in the industry for years. He's a professional caller and won competitions. He's a decoy carver. This guy eats, sleeps, and breathes birds, decoys, how they work. And, because the waterfowl seasons are limited, he's even expanding into crows and predators and other things because he just likes to fool creatures and be able to call them and decoy them. And we should just call you Mr. Deception.
I'm in therapy for that. It's okay.
Well, it's a pleasure to have both of you with us today. And I think it's safe to say that talking snow geese amongst the 3 of us should be a very natural conversation.
Yeah, well, I like to talk about that anyways.
Mario, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you're such a waterfowl fanatic.
I'll make it short, but I grew up in Pennsylvania where we, like everybody else, I remember my dad taking me on my first, hunt. I wasn't even carrying a gun. My dad carried me through, knee-deep water to put me on a stump so he can shoot ducks. And ever since then, I've always been drawn to, waterfowl and that, and it just keeps getting more and more. I don't even know how you can get more and more obsessed, but it just keeps going. And, like right now, everybody's like, oh, it's spring. Like, let's get ready for turkeys and fishing. And I'm like, I hate this time of the year. Unless I could get to snow goose hunt, and then after that, then it's all downhill. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Josh, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I just like to chase birds all the time, as much as possible. My dad got me into it when, I don't know, you probably know better than I do, Brad, about when my dad started taking me hunting, because you've known me for so long. But I'm fanatical about it. Yeah,
the interesting thing about Josh is, correct me if I'm wrong, you get just as much enjoyment out of spotting and watching birds as you do hunting them.
Yeah, most of the time for sure. I don't enjoy going out and not coming back with a hunt for people, but as long as I've got something lined up, I like sitting there and watching them.
Yeah, that makes you a valuable friend because you know the birds. You know what they want to do and how they act and what makes a good shoot and what constitutes one that might work and might not. It's a bit of a gamble. And the ones that are just like, no, we're not going there.
Well, yeah, most of the time I like to think I know the birds, but they like to remind me otherwise sometimes too.
Yes, the parameters around this are that the geese can often outsmart us no matter how much we think we know. People ask, how do we get started snow goose hunting? Any recommendations, guys?
Find a buddy. Find a buddy who knows what they're doing a little bit at least, or start driving around and looking for snow geese. Call some people you know, or maybe you don't know. The internet's a great resource for connecting with people these days, and meet up with them and say, hey, I've got a snow goose field. Maybe you don't have a bunch of decoys and stuff, but at least you're bringing some sort of value to the table.
Right. Mario, would you say that one of the most important things is understanding the social makeup of a snow goose flock and how they feed and how they interact?
Well, there's no doubt, like Josh is saying, the first thing he's going to do is, obviously you got to find them and spot them. And then, then you have to just be a sponge when it's from start to finish. So you're scouting, you find them. What are they doing in that particular field? Look at your watch. When are they doing it? And what are they doing? Are they coming in quiet? Are they coming in loud? Are they coming in like straight in? Or are you on a traffic line where they're back and forth, but maybe a roost and some other feed? What's the reason they're going to this field? Like, the more that you understand about the place and the time, then you can, say you're looking at it on a Wednesday, then you want to go hunting on a Thursday or Friday or Saturday. And it keeps going and they're still there. So you want to take into every little bit of information that you can. So when you do get there, you're ready to go. You know where you're putting your decoys, where you're putting the guys, how you're hiding, everything about it. There's no details that should be left unturned. And I'm sure Josh will tell you, like, you're looking at a field, you guys have a little bit better than I do here. When you guys are looking at a field, like, okay, there's 10,000 geese in there, 20,000 geese in there. That's great. But where are we going to hide now? Can we hide in the decoys? Do we have to hide on the fence? Do we have to hide on an edge row? Is there a little bit of cover? Like, what can we do? So that goes into your scouting right there.
Oh yeah, that's very crucial. I mean, we were humbled a couple times this year. We still killed our birds, but we picked the wrong spot, and we picked the spot where the birds were, but not necessarily where we could decoy them. And that's really crucial.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to is understanding how snow geese feed and interact in a field. One of the hunts we did, Josh, we didn't leave enough landing room for the birds the way the wind was blowing between us and the fence. I don't know if you remember that, but snow geese aren't like Canadas and ducks where you set up your decoys and the birds are going to come in behind their buddies because it's the safest spot in the field. Snow geese that are feeding with 10,000 friends don't want to be at the back of the line behind 10,000 birds. They want to be at the front. So they're continually leapfrogging going forward. And that makes them very different than the other waterfowl that we hunt, and the setup is quite different too. So you always have to make sure that you have the proper landing zone ahead of your decoys, upwind of your decoys, for the birds to have enough room to come in and land comfortably and make it look like the birds in your decoy spread are fighting to get into those positions as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's important. I mean, birds will leapfrog fields even if you can get out there and after the birds have left the field and check and make sure there's feed in there. As long as you have permission to go in that field, it's they'll jump to another field right away if there's no more food.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because playing leapfrog is what snow geese do. And a lot of this is, we'll call it an educated guess. Both of you have seen it, but when you go out snow goose hunting, Mario, you were here 2 years ago. We were set up and there was a roost field or a roost pond about 1.5 miles away. Those geese got up in the morning and we literally had 10 to 12,000 geese come over top of us. It was just like a freight train. It was an unbelievable sight that I'm sure both of you remember clearly. And I do. Yeah, the one thing that you yelled and kept making sure that everyone understood is don't shoot, nobody shoot. And that might sound weird when you spend all this time setting up decoys and you got 10,000 birds flowing over top of you at about 45 yards. But if we'd have fired the gun, those birds would have dispersed and not come back at all. So,
yeah, and who knows what would have happened? We could have blew them, I don't want to say out of the area, blew them to a different roost. Like, we could have messed up their whole daily routine of what they were doing. And then we didn't shoot, and then we let them all go. And then what happened? They started coming back and trading back and forth in smaller groups, and we got shooting, a good portion of the day. So that made a huge difference. Another thing that Josh said, and, you're talking about getting into snow goose hunting and everything, is there's no doubt about getting other people and having other friends because everybody has something to contribute. You know what I mean? Like, or do you have the trailer of decoys, or do you have decoys and another guy has decoys? Somebody has time to scout and somebody has, knows a lot of landowners and has a lot of permission. Like, everybody adds something to, the whole whole group. Everybody contributes. That's a huge part of this.
Yeah, that's the main part of it. I mean, that's the main part of waterfowling is it's fun to go out with buddies. It's fun to go out with other people. Yeah. That's why it's so popular.
I'd say it's the most social type of hunting there is. It's not like hunting a big whitetail where you spend 20, 25 days a year trying to go solo, setting up, watching tree stands. And you don't want any buddies with you to help blow it because you've probably, blown things once or twice yourself. So waterfowl is very social, and that's why we're talking snow geese, because they're a very social bird.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
Josh, how many times have you gone spotting and watched birds jump from field to field to field?
Oh, like referencing the hunts we were on 2 years ago while Mario was here. I mean, it's frustrating because you're watching them, you think you've got them dialed, you're like, yeah, we're good. And watch if they're around the edge of a field. Like if they're closer to the edges of the field, that field's probably been eaten.
Yeah, they picked it clean right to the fence lines.
And then they're going to bounce. And you see it every year, especially in the spring, especially with the big feeds in the spring. And but that year we did, I think, 3 hunts in 4 or 5 days, and all fairly successful hunts. And I think all within about, I'd say 5-10 miles of the same area. And you just got to kind of, sometimes pick a field.
Right.
Pick a field. And
that's why I bring it up. A lot of times they'll go set up the decoys in the morning, the geese fly over top, and they wait an hour, and they're like, well, that was a waste of time. Not with snow geese. My theory, and I think it's a theory, is that if you watch these birds, they're bouncing. Part of it is they're trying to exercise their wings and build their muscles for that long flight from the last agricultural fields all the way to the high Arctic where they don't stop. So part of the bounce is just part of a routine in the spring that they do to keep healthy and strong enough for that big flight. The other thing is the snowpack has really dispersed the food, packed it into the ground, and like you said, Josh, big numbers of birds clean it out quickly. So it's important to pick a good field, and it's all right to pick one that's in their rotation.
Yeah, and that's what they do is they'll bounce and rotate through field to field to field, and you can almost get a pattern, almost. I say that almost because they're snow geese and they're frustrating, but you can almost get a pattern of they're going to hit this field, maybe this field, this other field, and they'll bounce around all day. And
that's the beauty of it. I mean, once you understand that they bounce around, they're not going to use just one field, your success rate's going to go up because you're going to pull in singles, doubles, triples, maybe the odd group of 10. But if you wait long enough, a lot of times during the day, the mob is going to decide it's time to come feed in the field that you're in.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, seeing the mob and having the mob decoy is extremely cool, but shooting at the mob might, like we talked about earlier, probably isn't the best idea because you're gonna shoot at them. And had we shot that mob, I mean, the next day we shot a field 3 miles away, I want to say, and had we shot the mob the morning we were hunting when they were all decoying first thing, we probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to hunt those birds 3 miles away the next day. They would have been like, see ya.
Yeah. It's just interesting because I've been out with lots of people and they get frustrated and think that the game's over. I think the best individual event that we had when we had birds decoy was at noon on a bluebird day, hardly any wind. We stayed out there and we had a flock of about 300 adult snows circle us 3 times. And on the third round, we had them landing by our feet and coming over us 6 feet over top of us. And when we called for the shoot, it was just like, it's one of those moments that you never forget as a waterfowl hunter.
Yeah, I'll never forget that I forgot to load all the shells in my gun.
Mario, I'm sure you remember that particular day.
I'm laying in the field right now. I remember that. I was just about ready to grab some legs is what I was ready to do. And it was like, oh my God, are you going to call the shot or what are we doing here? Because I am ready to go.
Yeah. And, you know, part of that is being patient. It might not happen at 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock, but a lot of times snow goose hunting is a day-long event. It's hard sometimes to decide if the birds work you at all in the morning or you see a big mob go out and you still have singles, doubles, triples working you. You can stick with it. If the birds aren't paying any attention to you or you have some try to come in and keep flaring off, those are the frustrating days where you let the birds tell you that it's time to pack up, figure out what's going wrong, and find something new for the next day.
Oh, for sure. And it's going to happen. I mean, if you have anybody who hunts snow geese and they tell you they haven't had a bad day hunting snow geese, they're liars.
Yeah, or they've only done it once.
Yeah. I mean, my first snow goose hunt, we shot 186. So
Right. I remember that. Let's get right into decoys. Do you need 2,000 decoys to hunt snow geese?
no, but it doesn't hurt.
Depends on, can you carry them or drive them in, and how many guys you got?
You know, that's a really good point, because we're talking primarily spring snow goose hunts right now, and the three of us have been on a few hunts where there was no way that you're going to drive any vehicle, including a quad or a side-by-side, into a field without major tracks or disaster. So you've got a backpack full of decoys. We've used game carts. We've used sleds. We've used all kinds of things to get them out there. And sometimes, you know, you're not going to have a big wad, so you might get out there with 400 decoys, but you can make it work. You just need to spread them out further. And let's start, before we get into the individual decoys and stuff or how many numbers, let's talk about decoy spreads. Mario, I mean, you're a waterfowl specialist. What's your best advice for laying out the decoys?
You know, I mean, just like you were talking about before in their feeding patterns, you know, they always want to be ahead of everybody. That's where the food is, and they keep leapfrogging. So, you know, you want to get yourself in the wad of decoys, let's call it, to hide. And then you want to, just like you said, leave a space behind you so they can land, and a place where they can approach up front and come up, you know, right through the gut. And when you said, whether you have a lot of decoys or, you know, not a ton of decoys, you still need a good amount on snows. Like, you have to have, I would say, at least a few hundred. If you can do stock, you know, it doesn't take up much room. And I know when we packed in that time we all walked in, everybody took a bag, and we had at least 400 or 500 in each bag. So, I mean, we had 5 bags or however many we carried in. So, you know, I think obviously on snows, more is better, but you still have to start with a good amount, I think.
Yeah, to a degree for the most part. I mean, we've been fortunate, and if you spread them out enough, not as much in the spring because they've really run the gauntlet and been shot at all year, and for the last 8-9 months, something like that, they get shot for a year.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, in the fall, we've seen it where, I mean, this fall we went out, it was a mixed bag hunt, but I think we finally just decided, you know what, we're going to shoot our other birds. I think we had about 200-ish snow goose decoys out. We shot 44 snows with no wind and sun, and some days it just works.
That's right. That's why I wanted to make a point. If we've got new hunters out there or somebody that wants to try snow geese for the first time, you don't need 1,000 decoys. You can go out and you can start with what you have, keep working it, you know, just understand how the birds work and how the decoys need to be placed. I like to put out long strings of decoys that are like runways for the birds to follow in. And I try to picture in my head, if I was one of 10,000 snow geese feeding in this field, I'm either going to jump to the front of the line or I'm going to walk outward to find food that the others ahead of me missed. And that's exactly how I lay the decoys out. I've got a mob up front because everyone's fighting to be up at the front. And then you've got long strings that are slowly moving out to away from the center of what the flock would have gone through. And I also like to put a couple strips of, you know, maybe 8 or 10 birds in the middle zone where there's a group of birds that have found some feed that the others missed. So you've got these trailings of birds that lead up to the mob. And I call them runways because it's a really good description. And anyone that's hunted the snows, you'll know that they'll get over those long strings of decoys and follow them right up to the front edge. And, you can play it with the wind. Sometimes you can control where the birds come. On the upwind side, make your long strings and make sure those birds have lots of room to follow over top, because as they come up, they're going to lose more and more elevation. So long runways are important. If you don't have a lot of decoys, you need to really space them out. And, you can put them 8 feet apart or 2 meters apart if you need to. And if you have more decoys, of course, you can concentrate them more and fill in some of the holes. But those are the basics I look at when I'm trying to set up a decoy spread.
Yeah, you also don't want to make the decoys too concentrated, because it's very unnatural, and the birds will just pick you apart. Like a white blob just sitting in a field from an aerial view, they'll notice that, and it won't look very good.
Yes, I agree. I like to put a bit of a blob where we hide the hunters, and it's at the front of the flock, because they naturally congregate, but not on top of each other.
Yeah, no, you can't have too many.
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information to gain insight and knowledge. Head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information, from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game, to make the connection between health and food.
Yes. Now, Mario, let's talk decoys. What do you think the best decoys are for snow goose hunting?
I mean, if you're just starting, the most economical way to go is socks. If you're packing in or, want to get to some kind of numbers range, the snow socks are the best thing, for that. You could start with 100 pack and put them in a field and just keep growing that every year, or get some buddies and everybody could buy some. And in no time, you're up to, 200-300 or so, and that'll give you a good start. We've ran predominantly socks. We've also taken some flyers and put them, above us on the upwind side. So it looks like, some geese are hopscotching over the main bunch to get to feed, just like you talked about. That's what they're going to do. And we've also mixed in some full bodies or more lifelike decoys right at the bottom, right what they see first, and they're going to fly over. So they see that, they see the realism, and, they're going to come right over us to get ahead of that flock. So, more stuff is coming out. There's silhouettes you can put out, and the socks. There's full bodies. There's shells. You can use it all. It just depends on what you have and what you can afford.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Don't be afraid to mix and match. Like if you've got 4 buddies and you're all going goose hunting and you have 4 different types of decoys, put them all out.
Yeah, if all you and your buddies have different types of decoys too, you don't end up mixing them up. So.
Yeah, one of our big considerations early in the year is what we can get in the ground, because it's often frozen. So a smaller stake, like on a sock or even a silhouette, works well. Josh, it's probably a bigger consideration for you because you're often our workhorse, the youngest guy in the crowd. You get the biggest backpack with the most decoys. So what's the easiest to carry out?
Yeah, the socks are always going to be your lightest to carry out. I'm often carrying 1 or 2 bags on my back at a time to get them out there, which is, our springs the last couple of years have been very wet, and there's not a lot of fields that we've hunted where we've actually had the luxury to drive in. But I think part of our success is we're willing to hike the decoys in there and do the work that it takes.
I think that does make a huge difference, being able to have friends and hunting buddies that will go that extra mile and say, I want to get up an hour earlier. I want to go play in the mud to the point where I have it all the way up my clothes, my back, and my hair, my face. It's, Let's face it, in the spring, it's like one big mud puddle. It's like you're 4 years old again and your mom sent you out to the garden to play.
Yeah, but it's better because you get to shoot stuff, hopefully.
Exactly. We talk about mixing and matching decoys, and it's nice to have a variety. The socks are easy to carry in. Silhouettes work good because, again, you can get big numbers of decoys and put them out without taking up a lot of room. There's full bodies and flyers and all the rest of it. Now, if you had a mixed bag of decoys, you could put your ones that you feel are least realistic the furthest downwind and spread them out. That's when incoming geese are going to be the highest. They're looking down in the field, but they're not looking straight down. They're looking ahead at that main group where they're going to want to feed. So I'll be honest with you. When I started snow goose hunting, I used plastic grocery bags that I just put a clump of mud on and put them out there. And guess what? They worked. So if you do have a mixed bag of decoys, don't be afraid to use some that you feel are lower quality. Put them further downwind, and whatever you have that look the best, put them around you and at the leading edge where the geese are going to be the lowest in the air when they're coming in, when they're paying attention to the most detail on the ground and looking for a place to land. That's where your most realistic decoys should go, and that's where they'll make the biggest difference if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, also think about where the sun's going to be in the bird's eyes as far as that is, and shadows, all those other things play into effect too.
Yeah, that is a very important consideration, Josh. Sometimes you get incredible shadows coming off those decoys, and I think it really is foreign to the birds coming in from above. Last year we were out and we had a wind flare-up that was probably 70, 75 kilometer an hour winds, like 45, 50 miles an hour. And the decoys went crazy. They sounded like
grocery bags flying through a parking lot.
Yeah, if you've ever walked under a big flag when it's rippling at full mast, it just sounds like the noise is incredible. Our field just went crazy, and of course the birds wouldn't come in. But again, the beauty of those windsocks is all of us got up, ran out, and we staked them, the stake into the wind at an extremely steep angle so that it closed the hole on the decoy, and basically the sock laid flat on the ground. And what it did is it still provided a full view of a bird's body, but it wasn't moving at 200 miles an hour.
No, and it wasn't making the noise either, and we weren't worried about decoys flying away at that point, so that's nice too.
Yes, absolutely. Mario, different sock designs. I know there's a lot of different socks. Some are different heights, different stakes. What are some of your recommendations to people that are looking to purchase their first ever decoys?
Well, just like you said, there's some smaller ones. There's some shorter stakes. You have a different batch of different kinds. The thing that I would say is get the ones that are the biggest bag and the tallest stakes, and use those around you. You know what I mean, and around where you're hunting. And that's going to be your best bet there. Everything else you could put wherever, because I know you have different ones at different heights, stuff like that. So we always keep the taller ones, the taller stakes for around everybody. And then we end up, using the bigger bags and the bigger ones right by us. That to hide us helps a great deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I've noticed that big time over the years is the tall stakes around the hunters make them disappear. If you do have short stakes, obviously they're going to be a little bit lighter because there's not as much material there. Again, the furthest downwind, lightweight, easier to get more out there, but they do have a place within your spread. Of course, if you do have some full bodies, I understand Final Approach has got some full-bodied snow geese coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah, we used to have the old ones, and you had some old ones where they were a two-piece design, and you'd lose some of the heads, you'd lose some of the bases, you lose some of the stuff. So we went full steam ahead to a one-piece design. There's an upright and a feeder, and they're both on a motion stake, and the motion should be really good, even in a really good wind. And the stakes are easy to put out because they kind of have like a T-handle, so you're not tearing up your hands when you're putting them in, even if the ground is hard. So we've made some great strides there, brand new carvings on those. And we did have a great sock design. And then we sold out of the socks, and there was which we didn't know at the time when we got the company, but there was a small patent on a piece of that design. So we're in redesign mode on the snow socks to get a better design so you can get them out fast, pick them up fast, and they're going to work and do their job. So, yeah, we're pushing pretty hard on the snow market.
It's interesting, and the reason I bring it up is because I believe full-bodied snow goose decoys have a place in the spring seasons. And where I learned that was actually over in Saskatchewan. I was hunting with some outfitters, and the guides would have competitions to see how many geese they could shoot with the least amount of decoys. Now, there was a couple of guys that really watched the fields hard, and it's good to be around people like this because you can learn a lot if you pay attention. And They would look for where the birds were going to go back late morning, mid-morning, midday, to what is basically most of the year would be a roost pond. But in the spring, it's not a pond. It's just a flooded area of the field. And they would take 50 full-body decoys and put them into the water and have some walking out into the field and set up their blinds. And they did extremely well. Like I said, that's a place where full bodies are very effective. They wanted the best looking decoys because the geese were going to come in. They're going to come in hot and fast and look for a place to land and be right on top of you. And having good decoys concentrated the birds' attention on the decoys and not the hunters that were hidden there. So it definitely something I want to try here in Alberta. And Josh, I know you've been out spotting. How many times have you found birds on that sheet water that's in the fields before things thaw completely in the spring?
Oh, I mean, we've used the sheet water to our advantage before too, or even just very shallow sloughs. That the birds tend to work lower over there. They feel safer over the water in general, I believe. And I mean, we've also tried to hunt some big water for them fairly unsuccessfully because we watch them land there, roost there at night. We're like, okay, they'll be back here in the afternoon, which in the fall that would be true often. But like Brad said, they just stay in the middle of the fields. We have enough water in the fields in the spring typically that they just go find some water in a field and continue feeding.
Very true. It's interesting. We've had a lot of talk now about looking for birds, spotting, how they can frustrate you, what they do, how they interact socially, different decoys, how to set them up, different considerations. When it comes to the actual hunt, what do you guys think the most important thing is?
Hiding.
Mario, have you got something different, or is concealment of the hunters like the number one thing?
Hiding is no doubt number one. I will say another thing is like, are you, I don't want to say comfortable because you're going to be there all day, but it almost is. It's comfort, and are you in a position where you can readily shoot when you do have birds? Because if you do all this work and you're not set up to shoot, or you're laying on the ground and you don't have a backrest or a couple other things, like all that's for nothing. So, that's important. I don't think that's the most important, but definitely hiding is the most important. Hiding and being on the X, let's call it, on the best spot or one of the best spots in the area.
Yeah, I think this is extremely important to bring up because you can have all the decoys in the world. You can spend hours setting them up. You can have the best shooters in your crowd. But if one of them is sticking out like a sore thumb, good luck trying to dupe these adult snow geese after they've been hunted for 9-10 months.
Even the juvies at that point, because they're just following the adults. If you're not getting flocks of just juvies,
and we do lots of different things. Where it's comfortable and not extremely wet or cold, a lot of times I just put on whites and sit in the decoys, or take a small, chair that I can be comfortable in and low to the ground. But, a layout blind that you scrub in a little bit and hide and be more comfortable sitting all day and be somewhat up off the ground is beneficial. I think that's what you're getting at, wasn't it, Mario? Was, make sure that you set yourself up in a position in the field where you're hidden and you can be comfortable. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, being comfortable is important too, because if you got somebody who's fidgeting and trying to move around to make themselves more comfortable and you got birds working, those birds are going to pick that up right away. I mean, people keeping their faces down, not moving is very crucial.
We lost Mario there on the call. We're trying to get him back on, so bear with us. But Josh and I can certainly carry this conversation. Mario brought it up, the fact that you got to be comfortable where you can get up and shoot. And a lot of times we're often confused as to what to use. Do we use the chairs? Do we use the whites? Do we use the blinds? As we get later into the spring, I found that the blinds did make a difference. You get rid of more and more of that sheet water. Things start to dry up. More of the straws available for stuffing the blinds that's left in the field, and you can get away with using, any of the layout blinds, but you have to go to the effort to stuff them. Earlier in the year when things are still frozen down, the whites and something to keep you off the ground is by far the most comfortable.
Yeah, laying in the whites is awesome. I know there's some companies out there now. I know Alps being one of them, who's come out with this Snow Goose chair, which it's like a zero gravity kind of chair, but like pretty much puts you on the ground. And I've had the opportunity to hunt out of that a couple times now. They're unbelievably comfortable. So there's options like that.
That new Snow Goose chair they have is available this March, and there's a number of different blinds on the market. I believe Mario, you're back with us.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
I don't know either. What would you say your best blind is for packing into the field in the spring and staying concealed, being lightweight, all the things you need to be mobile?
Oh man, the easiest one and the lightest one is the Express, and it literally is just. It's like a little, I don't want to say sleeping bag, but it basically will cover your feet and legs, and, you won't get wet. You'll be able to lay on it, and it has a backrest, and you can throw it over, throw the doors over you if you need a little, cover from whatever, wind, rain, snow, anything that's going on. That's the lightest. There's no doubt. But, it goes up from there as far as how comfortable do you want to be, but then how big or high profile can you be in the field?
That's always the key, because in the spring everything's been matted down with snow, and anything that sticks out. Yep. So, when we're using the blind, sometimes Josh and I were just talking about finding material in the field to stuff the blind. One thing I like to do is, a lot of times early in the spring we're using Tyvek suits, and they last about one hunt, and then they're totally ripped up. I just take a pair of scissors and cut them up, and I actually tie those white strips onto the blind, and it really helps to conceal it amongst the mob at the front. Put some straw in there, put the white on there, and I think the blind is better concealed overall. There's no shadows. Works extremely well. Paper towels, I've done that, and even some of the sock decoys, I've taken some of those at times and put them on the blind as well.
Yeah, the sock decoys that with the folding stakes in them, they slide right into those slots on the blinds really well.
Yeah, they do work extremely well. One thing that we need to finish off our hunt is calls. A lot of duck hunters and honker hunters in Alberta, they're spoiled. Some of them don't even own a call because, let's face it, you can still kill birds here without talking to them, but snow geese are a different animal altogether. They spend their whole life in a huge social group. On their nesting grounds, there's tens of thousands of them all together. There's continual racket. When you go out and spot them, they're not 100 here or 50 there. They're in huge flocks, hundreds, thousands. They roost by the, tens of thousands. Anything that they come to that is silent is extremely foreign to them. It's alarming. So if you don't have some type of snow goose calls, all the decoys in the world aren't going to work. And I remember what I'll call the first very successful snow goose hunt I was on. One of the fellas with us walked down the line of blinds, and he had a shoebox full of old honker calls and speck calls and snow calls and ducks and everything. And people were saying, "Oh, I'm not going to take that. I don't know how to call." He made everyone take a call and said, "I don't care what you sound like. Just make as much racket as you can and watch what happens." And it was strange because it sounded like some guys were blowing a kazoo and some guys were honking and some were squeaking and quacking and doing this. But what do 10,000 snow geese sound like when they're coming in?
They just sound deafening. It becomes obnoxious, especially if you run an e-collar. You listen to that thing all day. When you go to bed, you'll hear that in your sleep still, and it'll drive you mad.
That's my point, is that you have to make some noise. So get some calls. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you have a spec call or Canada call or whatever. Just make some noise, and it's a good time to practice your other calls. Josh, I believe the e-collar is a big part of success. You've got the one that our group uses, and we use it a lot. So,
yeah, and it's awesome. I think this year we'll have 4 speakers for it, so you can really spread out the sound, which I think is awesome. I think some mistakes people make with the e-collars too is they crank them too loud, and when the birds get close, they're like that. It just doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound good. So find a happy mid-range where it's loud enough the birds can hear it, but it's not so loud that when they're getting in close, they're flaring off. You find often that singles, doubles, pairs, and stuff, they often key in on the sounds, and we've seen it, like Mario's an excellent caller, and we've seen it with singles and doubles. You can even just shut off the e-collar or turn it down a little bit, and then they'll really key in on somebody working a hand-blowing snow goose call, and it works very well.
Mario, I'd have to say that's probably one of your favorite things with any waterfowl is talking to them. And Josh is, he's referring to you in the field where we get a pair of geese coming in, and you'll pull out that single snow goose call and just start working them. And I think that's where you get as much enjoyment as pulling the trigger.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And 2 springs ago, when we were in that one field, I do remember that happening. We kept getting like singles and doubles and maybe a 4-pack or whatever, and they kept sliding through and then sliding off. And I don't know. And we didn't have the electronic callers that loud, but I think it was still too much. Like Josh was saying, they couldn't key in on anything. And I remember saying, hey, let's just shut it off next time, like a single or 2 come. And then I just started, and it was like, going back to a one-on-one conversation with that bird. And then we swung a couple singles and doubles and got them in close. So I agree with that. The electronic call is super important. And I definitely think you have to be loud at a certain point and run your volume down as they get closer. Like the closer they get, the lower you come down in volume, but still loud enough that it sounds like a bunch of geese. And on those singles and doubles and smaller flocks, see what happens. Turn the caller down. And if they don't buy it, then next swing around, maybe turn it all the way off and then, just go to a couple hand calls and see what happens, because they are very social and they are very keyed in on what's going on and the sounds. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, absolutely. Calling geese, especially snow geese, is important. And for all the Harvest Your Own followers, we're going to have Mario do a calling video with how to use a snow goose call, how many notes, how to blow it, how to sound, make the proper sounds. He's going to walk through that step by step, so that if you're wanting to get into snow goose hunting, you can watch that video and hopefully it'll help you in the field. And if you forget, you can always open it on your phone when you're out there and have a quick lesson. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We're going to have to wrap up. Tell me your favorite snow goose hunting experience or your favorite recipe.
Well, favorite recipe is snow goose legs for sure, bar none. They are delicious. Favorite hunt, probably. We had one year, I think it was Thanksgiving Day, we went out and we had the perfect conditions, a big feed, and we crushed 186 geese, and in your face all day long. It's unbelievable. If you can find anything remotely close to that, if you could shoot 30 geese, it's an awesome day. So just get out there and do it.
Absolutely. I remember that day well. What about you, Mario? Any favorite snow goose experiences?
Oh my gosh. You and I have had so many. I don't even know what to pick. You know what I mean? Feet down and picking your adult snow is just incredible. You know what it probably is? It's probably the time we shot I think we shot 130, and it wasn't even about that. It was the couple blues we shot, and you shot just a incredible blue. I remember that vividly, because that blue was just color-wise and everything else, that was incredible. And as far as recipes, whatever you're cooking when I'm there is the best. I'm into that. But I will just Josh and snow goose legs, the way Brad does them, killer.
Yeah,
I'll eat every one.
They're unbelievable, and they're so easy to make too.
Well,
yeah,
I'm glad I've converted a couple of the hunters into saving legs and thighs, and you guys are good hunting buddies, because not only do you help with the decoys and the field work, but everyone pitches in right away when we get home to clean them and fully utilize the birds. For our listeners out there, if you're looking for ideas for snow goose hunting, written information, and one of the most important parts, recipes, go to Harvest Your Own, because they're all there. We keep putting up new material every year, and we encourage you to try it. The spring snow goose season really helps identify the great old days of waterfowl hunting. We've never had it so good. We've never had such liberal limits, extra seasons, and I I really encourage people to get out and take advantage of it.
Oh yeah, it's the glory days of waterfowl right now for sure. I mean, we have unbelievable opportunities.
Mario, I'm not sure if you'll be able to get up and join us this year, if the borders will open up or not, but if not, we sure hope that you're here for the fall seasons and are staying extra time to make up for the lost opportunities in the spring.
I'll be there in September or October or both, and I will dig a tunnel if I need to this year.
Well, I want to thank both you guys.
Or swim.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
That's right.
Yeah, I want to thank both you guys for joining us and offering to share your information. It's very important to help bring new hunters into the fold, maybe give some experienced hunters some new ideas, and just share the passion. Tell people, get out there, take advantage of it. There's no better life than one that's in the outdoors. Thanks for joining us. We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.